Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Between the Shadows. This is Kristen.
This is Kara.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. Yes. And we are on episode 37. All right. And, guys, before we get started, we have a laundry list of shout-outs to give out here. First of all, I want to acknowledge all of the folks who have sent emails, and some of you dating back to July of last year. Please forgive me. Had some technical difficulties with our email, didn't have it coming through and alerting me, and I just didn't take the time to check it, so I apologize. So shout out to Amy, shout out to, I don't know your name, you just go to by Blackbird, but thank you for your email. We've had a couple from y'all, so we appreciate it. Yeah. To Craig and to John, who asked about what episodes we're covering in the episodes that we do. So we're going to start giving you those, all the episodes that we're covering. But we just want to say thank you so much for sending your emails, guys. We do see them, I promise. Yeah. Even if it's very delayed, we still see them. But yeah, keep them coming. We will take them for sure. Second of all, I want to give a shout out to all of y'all out there on YouTube who subscribed. We are up over 200 subscribers now. Yes, Not a huge feat for a lot of people out there, but definitely a huge feat for us, guys, because, we started this podcast almost 3 years ago for ourselves. We started it for fun because we had such a great time talking about Dark Shadows, and this is incredible. I mean,
we just want everybody to feel the way we feel and have somebody to talk to with and listen to about Dark Shadows.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
I never dreamed it would gain this big following, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much.
And last but certainly not least, we definitely want to shout out our Dark Shadows friends that are all nominated for the Rondos this year. Miss Penny Dreadful up for Best Host and Best Podcast here at Collinwood.
Yes.
And let's see, Mr. Patrick McRae up for Best Book for the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound. We have Todd Tarantula with our very own Quentin.
Yes, and
nominated for Best Independent Film.
Congratulations, guys.
Yes.
And Collinsport Historical Society, best website.
Yes.
Y'all, come on. We are voting for you
guys.
We
are bringing Dark Shadows back, guys. It is back.
Yes.
So,
just as on a personal note, shout out to Jewel at Resident of Collinwood.
Yes,
we love you, dude.
Yes, and one of our biggest supporters.
Yes, we miss you. We got to get you back on the show. Yeah. Got to return to your show, and thank you all again for listening to Between the Shadows. We are going strong, and I can't wait to see what this year holds for us. Yeah. So, guys, we are episode 37 for Between the Shadows, and in this episode, we're going to be covering episode 572 to 580, and we have decided to call this Julia's Solo Project.
Part one,
because we're going to have to do it in 2 parts. It's a big deal, guys, and there's a lot that happens.
It really is.
So we're going to jump right in, and here we go. So last time we left off where Barnabas had staked Tom Jennings in his coffin. Tom Jennings had become a vampire, and Barnabas has just staked him in his coffin. And after all of this, I mean, this starts moving kind of fast.
Yeah.
And
after Adam's demand.
Yeah,
he's like, get
definitely.
It going.
Impatient mother, yeah.
Yeah, he's very impatient and eager to get this going.
And I mean, I honestly, I get that. I get Adam's urgency, but at the same time, and I know this has to be partly due to, Adam's, what am I trying to say? Lack of knowledge to how these things work. How this is actually going to get accomplished. Yeah. I mean, as far as he's concerned, if, why can't it happen tomorrow? Why can't it happen tonight? Yeah. Why is this not going to happen? But, I mean, in this saga, this Julia Solo project, it just over and over, Adam, you can't rush these things. Adam, you can't do that. You have to wait. You have to be patient. And this whole time, Adam just does not understand. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are. That's where we are in the story. So just as Barnabas has staked Tom in his coffin, we see Nicholas, who can be lurking in the bushes, and he immediately goes into the crypt. Once Barnabas has done his dirty deed, he goes into the crypt to figure out what the outcome is, see what the outcome is. Yeah. And we go back to the old house where Julia has told Barnabas, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Yeah. Or maybe she told Liz. I can't remember. But she said the words, I'm going to die. And but she has recovered miraculously
Mm-hmm.
from Tom's attack. She's no longer dying, and the wounds on her neck have disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And Barnabas rushes in to see if she's okay, and she thanks him. And he says to her, "You've saved my life so often, I don't deserve thanks."
Yeah.
And whoo, boy,
Yeah.
was he not lying. Not
Yeah.
at all.
You're trying to find a way to say thank you. That was a really good way.
Yeah. I'm, you know what, though? I'm thankful. And it did my heart well to see him acknowledge that.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like, yeah, you better thank me. You know, I saved your life.
Yeah.
But he's right. And you know, he says, you saved my life so often, and I don't deserve that. I'm like, I love you, Barnabas, but no, you don't. You don't deserve that.
Yeah.
It's the least you could do.
Yeah.
But, you know, in previous episodes, when he couldn't find her because of Tom, Willie brought Barnabas to his senses and told him to admit to himself that he was worried because he genuinely cared about her.
It's like, what's it gonna hurt you?
Exactly.
You've already expressed genuine care for Maggie or Vicki. It's like, why is it so hard for you to admit it
for Julia?
With Julia.
Julia, who's done more for you than anybody, even members of his own family. Yeah. And Barnabas would always shirk and disregard Julia and would never come right out and admit that he did love her. Yeah. Even if he didn't love her entirely the way that she loved him, there was a true and genuine care and love and concern for Julia. And what he said in this moment, like we said, is absolutely 100% true. So
if there was any way to say it, that was it.
Absolutely. And that did my heart well to finally see Barnabas come forward and say that, you know? So moving right along, we see Roger pounding on the door of the old house, and he just comes right on in, and he's once again looking for Elizabeth. It's where he was at the last episode, you know? Right. And Barnabas says that she's there in the old house, and Elizabeth shows herself and says, you don't care about me. You just want us to meet back to Wincliffe. And Liz proposes a deal. Yeah. She's like, I saw a coffin. You go. If there's not a coffin, then fine. But if there is, I get to stay at Collinwood. And
she's like, I'm not that crazy, okay?
Yeah, I
just think about death. I'm not crazy. I'm just thinking about death.
She's so friggin' sure. She's like, there's a coffin. Go see it. Yeah. She's like, I'll go back, but if it's there, I get to stay. Right. And of course they go, and the coffin's gone. And so we as viewers who are watching this, we assume that it was Nicholas. Yeah. Well, I mean, obvious choice. Yeah. And poor Liz, as soon as she hears that there was no coffin, she begs Roger just to ask Julia. Yeah. Ask Julia about me. She claims that other than being obsessed with death, like you just said, she's okay. Yeah. And Julia lies about the crypt and the coffin, but also talks Roger into keeping Elizabeth at Collinwood. So no harm, no foul. Yeah. I think that's what Liz wanted. I just want to stay. Yeah. But Barnabas is set on finding the vampire who made Tom the way he was. Yeah. Because Tom...
It wasn't me.
Yeah, exactly. And Julia believes that Nicholas is involved with the vampire and also wants to find the vampire as soon as possible. You know, I ain't gonna let this happen again. That was awful.
At this point, I think she goes and sees Maggie. Yeah, she goes and sees Maggie, who... has all this time, she's been worried about Joe all this time.
Yeah, Joe's really fallen off the deep end.
And she says that the cannery has called her wondering where Joe's been. He hasn't been at work. He has missed the last 3 days of work. About 3 days of work.
With no call, no show.
Yeah. And Julia's reason for going over to Maggie's is Nicholas Blair.
Yeah, oh yeah.
That's her motive. Yeah. And he offered a lot of money for one of Sam Evans' paintings. Julia asks a few questions, but the most valuable piece of information that she got was that Nicholas would be out of the house at 5 p.m. that evening.
Yeah, they got a plan.
So she suggests to Barnabas that they go and scope out his house and see if they can find anything.
Yeah, and I want to touch on this just because it just jogged my memory a little bit of Joe missing 3 days at work at the cannery. Yeah. He's not on the boats anymore. Because Bill Malloy pulled him from the boats into the office. Remember Bill Malloy way back in the day?
Oh my goodness.
We talked about Bill Malloy 3 years ago. But it's just, it's interesting to me because, Liz was the one who really vied for that promotion. Oh, yeah. So that Carolyn would love him enough to marry him, Yeah. And now here we are. Joe is on the brink of getting fired. We're getting a little ahead, but he's on the brink of getting fired. Yeah. And it's just, it's so sad to see Joe deteriorate the way that he did.
Yeah, it was...
It was horrible. I
didn't like it at all. It's very sad.
So on the note of Joe, Julia leaves Maggie's, and then Joe shows up out of nowhere. Yeah. Weak like he's been, deteriorating like he's been, and Maggie wants him to see a doctor, but of course he's the victim of a vampire. He's not going to go see a doctor. He refuses.
Yes. Yeah.
And they argue, and Maggie says she's tired of being stood up, and I'm tired of arguing.
Yeah.
And he tries to give a good answer and says that he had to see someone. And I hated this so much for Maggie and Joe. I was so happy earlier on when he dumped Carolyn finally, and Maggie and Joe were a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and they were together, and she mended Joe's heart after Carolyn stomped on it, you know.
Yeah.
And Joe stood beside Maggie when she was dealing with her round of being a victim to a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she went off the deep end and, you know, reverted back to her younger self and escaped Barnabas, it didn't seem like Joe stood a chance of recovering the way that Maggie did.
Yeah, which is very sad.
It really is. It really is. And it just, like Joe stood beside her the whole time. You know, she was off the deep end because of the vampire. And then she finally came back. And then things went back to what they were. But this didn't seem like it was going to be a choice for Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me so sad.
Yeah.
So sad.
I mean, and I guess that's the comparison between Barnabas, our reluctant vampire, as opposed to just what it really is.
Yeah, I agree.
With any other vampire being a vampire.
I agree.
Like, there's no mercy.
And, you know, Angelique didn't want to be a vampire, but she did relish in the fact when Nicholas did let her go out and find a victim.
And her ultimate goal is to get her power back.
Yeah, exactly.
So, of course, she's going to sit there and do everything Nicholas tells her because she wants her power back to take him down.
Yeah.
So. And
Angelique, I mean, I think Barnabas succumbed to the being a vampire as well. When he, you know, there were times of it because he just couldn't help himself. And I think he, you know, settled to the fact that I'm never going to be human again, so I might as well make the best of this, you know.
But even within all that, Barnabas felt like crap every single time he attacked somebody. Like, absolutely. He ended up feeling like crap.
I agree.
Like,
but I just didn't feel that from Angelique. I didn't feel the reluctancy that I felt from.
Not at all.
Joe asks Maggie for help. Keep me inside. Do not let me leave. Mm-hmm. And this seemed like one more ditch effort to escape what he was dealing with.
Yeah, to fight it.
Yeah, and he first asks her to lock the door, but then just wants to leave town completely. Let's just go. Let's just leave this town. Mm-hmm. And Maggie does her best. I mean, she blocks the door, and Joe literally throws her to the ground and leaves. Mm-hmm. And he goes to Angelique's coffin and waits for her. But right about that time, Barnabas and Julia and their little plan, because Nicholas is out of the house, show up too. Yeah. And Joe says he's waiting for Nicholas to tell him to stay away from Maggie, you know, being the knight in shining armor, or at least seeming to be. Yeah. And Barnabas convinces him to go back to Maggie, all while Angelique is trying to keep him there. You know, like, he's got the voice in his head, and then he's got Barnabas telling him, you know. Yeah. But Barnabas wins this round, and he does go back to Maggie while Nicholas is collecting his painting and wooing Maggie, you know.
Right. So Joe ends up going back to Maggie's and asks her, you know, to keep him there.
Yeah.
Asks
round 2.
Yeah, he asks for sleeping pills to knock him out and for her to sit up and watch him all night. Yeah. So Joe is convinced that this is his last chance, whatever he means by that.
Right.
And like Julia, I think Joe is convinced that he is going to die.
Yeah, I think so too.
So we see Nicholas back at his own house, and he starts berating Angelique for not keeping Joe there. I love the way he treats her because she deserves it.
She really does. And again, it's still, even though she's a vampire now, Nicholas is still giving her such a hard time. I love it.
But she acts like a child, so he treats her like a child.
Yeah.
But so he starts berating Angelique for not keeping Joe there, and she tells him that Barnabas was there trying to convince Joe to leave. Yeah. So Nicholas tells her, just get Joe back here, or he will make her watch the sunrise.
Go ahead, Nicholas.
Ready?
I mean, and Nicholas is just sinister enough. He'd do it.
Yeah, I know.
Make her watch the sunrise.
But it's that, I think bunny trail, but I'll make it quick. I think that within Angelique herself, that is where her and Barnabas are so much alike, like in their afflictions, you know, like, and Nicholas plays on that weakness, like, and he mentions it later, but he basically tells Angelique, Barnabas is your weakness, and you just cannot not give into it,
right?
No matter what,
you can't resist,
and so
I agree.
So back at Maggie's, she gives Joe the sleeping pills, and they work for a while. But Angelique finally succeeds, and Joe wakes up and goes to her, and Nicholas shows up at Maggie's again. claiming that he thought she was in danger.
So gallant.
I
So
It's like out of the blue, out of nowhere. Why'd you think I was in danger?
in the middle of the night, so gallant goes to Maggie's. And I just feared that you were in danger. Okay, Nicholas. and she buys it. She friggin' buys it.
And then on top of that, he convinces Maggie that Joe's probably interested in somebody else.
Okay, not so gallant.
I'm like,
now
but
see.
what is she to believe at this point? Like, he won't tell her what's up, and
right.
when he's like, I need to go see somebody.
Right, and I think at this point, I think Maggie, she loved Joe. I know she did. Her heart was for Joe, but I think at this point, you can only give so much before you're like, you know what, I can't
do it.
And we see this in the next scene here.
Yeah.
The next day she goes to Joe's apartment one last time to get answers.
Yeah.
And let Joe know that the cannery's ready to fire him. This is that point that the cannery's ready to fire him if you don't give him a call. And communicate with him, Yeah. And Joe literally he's at his end. He has no answers, and Maggie decides that she has had enough, and they break up.
Like, I never thought I'd see that.
I know. I'm not crying. I'm just getting sick, guys. Sorry.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
You're crying. I'm not crying. But it was kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
And because, from the beginning, when he was with Carolyn and they were talking, he was talking to Maggie, you wanted that to happen. You're like, just ditch this woman. She doesn't want you. Here's one that does want you. And you really like rooted for them. And it's just, seeing it in this way was just, broke my heart. Broke my heart. It's not fair. But so Nicholas finds out via Willie through his magic mirror on the wall. I love this mirror though. Come on.
Definitely.
About how this experiment that they're working on works. He finds out why Angelique's curse failed, and they finally understand what Eric Lang's message on the tape recorder meant.
After all this time.
Yes. They figured it out. Julia and Barnabas never fully understand what that message means.
And they never heard it.
No, they never heard it.
They never got to hear it.
They've only heard about it, and they draw their own conclusions, which, more... They don't understand exactly what it means, but they draw the conclusion that, we better keep Adam alive just in case, because we don't know what's going to happen.
They end up finding out just by... Not experiment, I don't know the word, but just by events that end up happening, they figure out what the connection is between the two.
They kind of they draw their own conclusion, and their conclusion is pretty close to the truth.
Yeah.
So
close enough to, like you said, keep Adam alive.
Right. And so Nicholas discovered that Barnabas has provided the life force for Adam, and they need someone to provide the life force for the female as well. Yeah. And Angelique hears the conversation because she's lurking, she's doing everything she can to get out from under this vampire curse. Yeah. And she wants to be used for the life force so that she can be, she can escape. Mm-hmm. And of course, Nicholas refuses her. He doesn't have Angelique in mind for this. No. And he wants an evil woman that he can control. Yeah. And so this brings us to the old house where Jeff is in the lab with Professor Stokes. And Jeff is explaining how things are going to work when Adam shows up. And Jeff completely loses it and begins to taunt Adam with all of these horrible things that he and Dr. Lang did to bring him to life, and how disgusting, you make me sick just looking at you, and he snaps and tries to kill Adam with a scalpel. Yeah. And again, why does Jeff Clark think that he can take on Adam? Adam is easily twice his size. Right. And
supernatural strength.
Yeah. And thank God the professor was there and convinced Adam to let him go. But Adam just keeps proving over and over to Jeff that he can kick his butt anytime he feels like it. Mm-hmm. And Jeff keeps going after him. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm. We thought Joe was knight in shining armor.
Yeah,
Jeff
then you
Clark
got Jeff Clark.
Over the top. It's like...
and when in the past with Peter Bradford, Peter Bradford was a scrapper.
Yeah.
But I think he
was just more tolerable than Jeff Clark.
I know. And it's...
But great acting.
Yeah, definitely. And it just, anyway. But Adam wants to know why the experiment is taking so long. This is the point I was trying to get at earlier. Mm-hmm. He doesn't understand why it's taking so long. And Professor tells him, be reasonable. And Adam says this, and I have to just touch on it because, oh man, it got me right in the feels. He says, who has been reasonable with me? Who has spoken truth to me? Yeah. Who cares for me? If I died tonight, who would say a kind word for me? Who would cry for me? No one, Professor. Mm. And I'm like, it got me right in the feels. I mean, Adam's true reasoning for wanting a mate is so that he will feel like there is one person in this whole world that will love him and care for him. And he's got to feel so alone in this great big world, you know. And he feels like everyone he has contact with has just treated him badly. And it's not entirely true because he's so on the defense that he can't actually see who actually cares for him.
Right. Right.
And there's a line in Young Frankenstein where the monster says, "For as long as I can remember, people have hated me. They've looked at my face and my body, and they ran away in horror. In my loneliness, I decided that if I could not inspire love, which was my deepest hope, I would then cause fear. I would instead cause fear."
Yeah.
And that, oh, man, that describes Adam so accurately, I think.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be loved, and before Nicholas got a hold of him, he was a kind man, and I felt like he was way on his way to being loved.
Yeah, starting with Sam Evans.
Yeah, agreed. And like you said, Sam Evans and Professor raised him to be an upstanding and kind and a gentle man.
Yeah.
Yet every person he came into contact with feared him and didn't want to take the time to get to know him. And then once Nicholas got into his head, he'd rather everyone feared him than get what he wanted.
So back to Angelique. She has been notorious for disregarding Nicholas's wishes.
Yeah.
This time, she finds Jeff at the old house and makes him her victim. She gets
this
another
one. As if Joe weren't enough.
Yeah.
And then she got Jeff too.
Yeah, but she had to have one of her own.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I guess.
She did this because she wanted to be used as the life force. Again, going against Nicholas's orders. It doesn't happen, of course, because the body isn't it's just not ready.
No, it takes time. Also, I just want to point out, just on a side note here, completely unrelated, not at all related to the point we're trying to make, but I just have to point out that when Angelique shows up at the old house, you can see her reflection in the mirror, you know, vampires in the mirror. It's like, hey, y'all made a little mistake there. That's all. I just find it comical that a vampire showed up in a mirror. Anyway, I'm again, not at all to the point.
No, we loved it. It's funny. It's funny.
But this brings us up to Collinwood, where Roger and Victoria are talking about Jeff, and Roger wants to give Jeff a job. And this means that they could get married sooner, but Jeff turns it down because it requires him to leave immediately, and he'll be gone for 6 weeks for, like, training and stuff. And he turns it down because of the experiment. And
we all saw what happened to Burke Devlin. He left for 6 months and didn't come back.
And didn't come back.
No.
And, yeah. And I mean, Jeff is already acting strange because of the experiment, and now with the added bonus of being Angelique's victim. So not only did she destroy Maggie and Joe's relationship, but she is well on her way to destroying Jeff and Vicky's too. Just for very selfish reasons. I think Angelique was incredibly selfish during this time. But so during this time, we get a little more of Liz's ordeal as well. Right, you know, she gets to stay because Julia convinced Roger to let her stay. And she still fears her own death, and she's consumed by it. You know, she has a dream where she is, in fact, buried alive, and she wakes up screaming and wants to call Richard Garner. We haven't heard from Richard Garner in forever.
Yeah.
She wants to talk to Richard Garner to revise her will, but Richard won't speak to her. Because he's caught wind, probably from Roger, probably whatever, from whoever, that, you know, Liz has gone a little off the deep end. She's obsessed with death, you know. So Richard Garner won't speak to her. So she turns to the other lawyer that she knows of, Mr. Tony Peterson. And we haven't heard from Tony Peterson since he and Cassandra were, you know, canoodling, I guess you could say.
I love Tony.
I love Tony too, and it's really good to get him back in the picture again, at least for a short time. But Elizabeth wants to make arrangements for her burial so that she can escape in case she gets buried alive. I mean, this woman literally thought of everything. She wants a marble platform for her casket to sit on. She wants air holes in the box so that she doesn't suffocate. And she builds an entirely new mausoleum to avoid being buried underground. And she wants a bell on the building that connects to a button that will be placed at her fingertip inside of the coffin. I mean, she literally thought of everything. she is not going to be buried alive and not be able to get out. And honestly, it was pretty genius, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, if not paranoid, but we know why she's so paranoid. This was the curse that remained from Cassandra.
Yeah.
And it just hung on, even now that Cassandra is no more and she's back to being Angelique and she's a vampire. I still can't figure out why that curse hung on so hard.
Because Angelique's still alive.
I guess.
Yeah. Like, if Angelique was truly destroyed, then yes, I believe the curse would have been lifted. But Angelique, somehow she survived that fire on the tree, like being burned alive. Somehow she survived.
Well, Nicholas brought her back.
Fine. I mean, yeah.
And then Nicholas killed her off or caused her to be killed off and then brought her back again. So yeah, I guess that would make sense. That would make sense. But
yeah. But I think it's because Angelique's still around.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
And maybe Nicholas had something to do with that to keep that curse. I mean, it could be anything.
The curse does end up being broken. It's a while. It's a long while, actually. Yeah. And so now that Tony Peterson is back in the picture, the question of he and Carolyn comes back up as well. And he admits that he stopped coming around because he was embarrassed about how he behaved with Cassandra. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't understand why he did it, and he actually hates her. Yeah. And Carolyn is just coming from Adam's room, and Adam sees them on the terrace.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets jealous, and he attacks Tony. Mm-hmm. And this is the end of an episode, so the next episode is a recap of the scene we just saw. Yeah. But the difference is that there's a different woman playing Carolyn this time, just in this one episode. Yeah. And Diana Walker actually plays Carolyn. She appeared in As the World Turns and Where the Heart Is, and just this one episode, she stood in for Nancy Barrett. Yeah. So just a little tidbit I'm throwing out there. But she basically tells Adam that she doesn't like him in the way that she likes Tony. And she wants to be his friend. But Adam, even in his learning state, knows that he doesn't want to be in the friend zone with Carolyn.
What the friend zone
He feels that friend zone real heavy.
Ouch.
But Adam has felt the sting of the friend zone, and maybe he doesn't know what it's called, but he feels it.
I know I don't like it, whatever it is.
I swear that's got to be like a primal instinct. There is no book out there that I know of that tells the guy how to get out of the friend zone. At least not the ones that Adam is reading anyway. I mean, he's reading Sigmund Freud.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he leaves her a note that says, "You don't want me. Goodbye."
To the point.
To the point.
I love it. I love a man that's to the point.
I should have said, I don't want to be in the friend zone. Goodbye. But whatever, it's okay.
Oh,
but that's literally that is what I thought of when he wrote that. I don't want to be your friend. Goodbye.
Right.
Sorry, guys, but it's funny.
Poor Adam. I mean, but again, it kind of brings you back to what Adam was saying. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me.
Yeah, nobody would ever cry for me.
I mean, that's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking.
And he's not a monster.
He's not.
He's not. He wasn't raised that way. Like we were just saying. So it's heartbreaking.
I agree.
But we go back to Jeff Clark here, who is working on this experiment with Julia and Barnabas. And he is also now under Angelique's power. Yeah. And Angelique wants him to do the experiment and use her as the life force for the mate. And he gets Julia's notebook and starts reading about how to bring it to life.
No.
But she quickly catches him.
Y'all, that notebook.
I know.
The notebook.
Yeah.
It doesn't just have the notes of Adam in there. It has, Lord.
It's Barnabas, too.
It's how she cured Barnabas. Well,
yeah.
She did cure Barnabas. Barnabas just screwed it up. But it has all of those in there, too. Oh, my gosh. Mm-hmm. What if Jeff had read all that?
I know.
But, I mean, he could have very easily come across it.
Yeah. But he himself, not just under Angelique's power, I mean, I think he's interested as well. Like, he wants to know who they are planning on to use the life force and how they're really going to make this happen, because he kind of bowed out before.
He did bow out, and Julia wiped his memory.
Before Adam came to life, and she wiped his memory, and Julia just tells him the less he knows about it, the better, which is absolutely right.
100%. Ugh.
And Julia tells Barnabas about the incident with Jeff, but Barnabas is more worried about the fact that there have been no attacks in town and that they aren't any closer to finding out who the vampire in town is.
Yeah, yeah.
And Julia wants to let it go, but Barnabas doesn't.
No.
And he doesn't.
And I think Barnabas I mean, Julia's obsessed with this experiment, which she should be, I mean, it's looming over their heads, and Adam has made a threat, and pretty convinced that Adam's going to carry it out. I mean, he's a man of his word.
Yeah.
But Barnabas, being a vampire himself, like, he knows the torment, he knows the danger, and I think that's part of that. Who is this vampire? We got to get rid of him, and I think that's why he's obsessed with it so much. But
yeah.
So, I mean, with Jeff being a victim and with his time in the experiment, Vicky's feeling very neglected by him. And he, like Joe, keeps standing Vicki up for dates, and he turned down Roger's offer for a job, and Vicki thinks that Jeff might be having second thoughts about marrying her. So Professor comes to the old house to deliver the news that Adam has gone away and is feeling rejected, and he feels that Adam will strike out at anyone, and suggests that they work around the clock to finish this and give him what he wants. Y'all better
just get it over with.
And once again, Jeff has to bail on his date with Vicki, and she returns the engagement ring.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Relationship number 2.
I know, my gosh, so many breakups. But this does, I mean, Maggie and Vicki were already close. They were already besties.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that these besties have both broken off their relationships just kind of brought them a little bit closer. So we go to Nicholas's house, where Angelique wants to talk with Nicholas, and she's getting bored with Joe.
Yeah, because it's not what she wants to do.
I just said, like a piece of like a dog, or I don't know.
I'm bored with you.
Yeah, and she sent him home, and Nicholas says that they'll get someone else for her to play with if she's getting bored, which just made me so mad, because she destroyed an entire relationship. She destroyed a man, and now she's getting bored with him. Not just, it irks me.
Yeah.
Irks me to tears, man.
Yeah.
So there's a knock at the door while they're having this conversation about who to play with, and it's Adam.
Yeah.
And he's come to tell Nicholas that he wants to go to Barnabas and tell him just to cancel the whole experiment. He's like, Carolyn doesn't want me, and I don't want anybody else.
I'm leaving. Yeah.
And Carolyn rejected him, and he doesn't want anyone else at this point, because he doesn't think that anyone will love him as much as he loves Carolyn.
Yeah.
And Nicholas isn't having any of this. He convinces Adam to go back to Collinwood and stay in his room for Carolyn.
Yeah.
Because Nicholas has a plan. He has a plan that he hasn't told Adam about, that he's manipulating Adam into being a part of, and convincing Adam it's for him and not for Nicholas.
Right.
And just all the manipulation.
Master manipulator.
Yeah, exactly.
Nicholas.
So Angelique uses the magic mirror to spy on the old house to see how things are progressing, and Julia has worked her tail end off, like just worked her butt off, and tells Jeff that the body will be ready by midnight, and they could do it tonight if they had a life force. And Nicholas catches Angelique looking into the mirror and wants to know what she discovered. And she lies, because it's what Angelique does to get her way. She's manipulating too. And she tells him that they are still a week out, and asks again to be used as the life force. And Nicholas isn't quite sure he believes her, and tells her that he doesn't care about her problems. Those are your problems. I don't care. And Angelique, she's so reckless when it comes to following Nicholas's orders. And she goes to the old house anyway and wants Jeff to do it tonight. And he tries to tell her he doesn't know anything, or even, doesn't know enough about the experiment, and it'll fail if he tries, and that she could die. I mean, Angelique's already dead. But then she tells him that death is not the worst thing that can happen to her. And she remarks that she and death are old friends. Boy, that's absolutely true. She hit the nail on the head with that one. I mean, Angelique was one of those people that kept dying but kept coming back.
I know, she just would not die.
And this is true till the end of the show, when she dies for real, y'all.
For real, I know.
Spoilers for those of you who've not watched, because I know there's a couple of you out there. I apologize. But I promise it's way at the tail end, and you'll probably forget about it by the time you get to it. I promise. She only died one time and stayed dead with. I'm sorry, I'm digging a hole here. I apologize.
Maybe we'll cut that out.
but we've already seen her die and come back several times.
Yeah.
And there's a scene that I want to talk about just for a second. There's a brief moment where Adam comes back and goes to Carolyn's room in the middle of the night, and she tells him that she missed him and they need to be really honest with each other. And she gives him a sweater, that green sweater. And she saw it in town and immediately thought of Adam. And Adam's reaction to it, Y'all, I shed some tears. I'm not even gonna lie. He was so touched by the gift, like so grateful, and he tells her he's never gotten a gift before, and his feelings just got the better of him, and he ran out. It was, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was just the most
Like
precious
one of the
scene in the
rare genuine
world.
moments.
I don't know why it brought me to tears. I guess I just felt Adam in that moment. It was like, this woman that he loves more than anything in the world gave him a gift, and it was the first gift he had ever received, and it was just
Probably the last.
yeah, and
The first, the only, and the last.
and it was he wore that sweater till the end, until we stopped seeing Adam.
Yeah, he did.
And I mean, you can just tell how much he loves Carolyn. He doesn't want to hurt her, and tells her that um she's the nicest person in the world, and there's no one like her. And I do truly wish that Carolyn had not been so afraid of her feelings for Adam, because I believe she did have them, but she was too afraid of her position, or maybe she was ashamed of him. I'm not sure, but there were definitely feelings there.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be the end of round one
Yeah.
for Julia's solo project. We've still got a lot to cover, but I do want to save it for next time so we don't run too long on time here. But we just want to say thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for listening. Congratulations to you Rondo nominees out there. We are excited. We are over the moon. We've already voted. Y'all, we hope you win. We're rooting for you. Yeah. But until next time, our contact information is the same. Between the Shadows 2021 at Gmail. We are on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Head over, like, and subscribe. That is my that's my plug, and that really does help us out. It helps us grow the podcast. But guys, until next time, remember to keep it between us and the shadows. Good night.
Good night. There are many secrets at the great estate of Collinwood. Secrets that sometimes demand action. And one of them lies on an operating table in an old house on the estate. It is a lifeless body, which may someday walk. And on this night, an attempt is being made to bring it alive. But by a man who does not have the right to do it, using a woman who knows she must give life to the body in order to escape the punishment to which she has been sentenced. And if they succeed, they will create more terrible problems than they have solved.
You've been listening to Between the Shadows, a Dark Shadows podcast. All original Dark Shadows music, video clips, images, and media are not owned by Between the Shadows and is the sole property of Dan Curtis Productions and is only used to promote Dark Shadows and should not be distributed, copied, or reproduced.